Thank you very much, brother. That was fantastic. I can have a lot more to say, but we'll let let somebody else talk for a minute. Questions from men in the audience? Please raise your hand, and Ramsey will bring you the mic.
Can't we just talk in private? I'm sure.
We'll see you in April. Yeah, Todd's going to be up in Marion in April, so we're looking forward to that. But one of the points you were making in your was that it's going to rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. You used a different verse, but I think that applies. That kind of struck an idea or a thing with me about deism and theism. The idea that God still has control over things today after sending his son, or the idea that God created the world and is leaving us alone for us to just do right or wrong. It's something I've struggled with the idea of providence and things like that over the years. I'd like for you to expand on that a little bit.
Ooh.
Sorry, it's a big one.
I do think that God works in a personal way in our lives. And I think that because, when I said that I could speak right along with Paul, that the things that have happened to me have fallen out rather than furtherance of the gospel, there are things I experienced as a child that were tough. I wasn't going to say this, but I thought about putting it in there, but my parents divorced when I was 3. And my mother, probably around when I was 5, she married my stepfather. That was difficult. But I saw the path my biological father took, and had he raised me, you guys probably wouldn't know me. It would have been a disaster. My stepfather showed me what manhood was, and he took me to school, and he showed me how to read and write a little bit better, and he came to my parent-teacher conferences, and I played football, baseball, basketball, I ran track, I was in speech contests. My biological father was never there. My stepdad, always front row, standing ovation, whether I did good or not. He saved my life. And then later on, he obeyed the gospel. Yeah, that's God. I got no other explanation for it. That's like God showing up in my life for the long haul in a big way. So I don't think that God wound the earth up like a clock and then stepped back and let everything just, fall out the way it did. I think that for Paul to be able to say the things that have happened to me have fallen out rather than furtherance of the gospel means that God had some sort of deliberate, act or deliberate hand in what Paul was experiencing, the route Paul was taking, the things that happened with Joseph as well. There was some deliberation, even though it might not have been apparent to Joseph at the time. God had his hand in the plan, I guess. So now I might get myself in further trouble. But I did think of, when I was putting this together, the sovereignty of God, the providence of God, and free will, Now, something that I didn't include, you may have come across this with William Lane Craig as well. He was asked one time in a question and answer session, if God is all knowing, then how do we have free choice? Right? My thinking on this is still it's not very strong yet, but he brings up this idea of middle knowledge. Did you come across that? Middle knowledge? Where he says that God knows, it's also called Molinism. God knows everything from beginning to end. what will happen, what you will do. But God also knows what you would do. That's what he calls middle knowledge. God knows that if you do this, then this will happen. He also knows if you do that, then this will happen. You know what I mean? This is way off of what you asked, but this did also come up in my thought. It's just not, I haven't matured it yet, so I didn't bring it up, but that's a point to ponder too.
This is just another verse I think that kind of goes with what Chris was saying, but I really like Philemon verse 15. This is kind of helped my thinking. For perhaps he departed for a while for this purpose, that you might receive him forever. So even Paul was willing to say perhaps. He didn't know everything, but he recognized that the providence of God is something beyond our understanding. And so we don't understand the workings of the mind of God, but he is at work. And so it's one of those things we can say perhaps, but it's ultimately up to him. So
While y'all are thinking, pondering, I was posited this question, and I kind of caught me off guard initially. I think you provided something I think that'll probably answer, but I just want to ask you anyway. I had a brother once said, I understand why maybe God would allow human suffering, but what about animal suffering? Animal suffering where they're just experiencing pain and sometimes, horrendous acts just because. What is the end goal or the end result? Why does God allow animal suffering of all things? And it stumped me for a second.
I don't know why he allows animal suffering. But I have, in my study of this, come across the notion that animals suffer, but they're not aware of their suffering. They're not aware of their suffering, even like as a human would be aware of their suffering. Animal can't, of course, say, why me? But I've seen images where animals are walking around with cuts and abrasions and whatnot, and they don't seem aware of it. That I know that doesn't answer why it happens, but it might appease our conscience to think they're not aware, like we're aware, that they are hurting or that they're in pain.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that falls kind of under natural evil, like you were describing, as opposed to moral evil?
Yeah, I think that would be under the framework of natural evil.
Yeah, brother, that was very good. Thank you. I thought of Eve, cradling Abel in her arms and saying, "Why me?" If there was anybody who was very close to an answer, she was, the first person to sin, and so she reaped, the terrible consequences of her sin. And then I also thought of Job. Job was a righteous man, but of course he was also a sinner, and he said, "Why me?" quite a bit. And I like the point you made that it is, in a way, the province of, the unrighteous to question God really in this matter. Because I think part of the enlightenment of being a Christian is understanding that we are flawed and that we're fallen, and the pain that we experience, the suffering, the aging, death, and so on, is because of sin, isn't it? My question would be: is that one way to look at it? That the people that ask this question the loudest are people really that don't have faith to understand that evil's a natural consequence of the way I have lived. It was a consequence of the way Job had lived, and Eve as well.
Yeah. What was your question again?
Yeah, we have thoughts on it.
Yeah, the people who raise the question the loudest, are people who lack faith in God, I would say, yeah. I've read and have heard stories about people. I know at least two people in the church who experienced things, and I'm thinking, man, that's tough. But it just brought them closer to God. The answer to the problem of evil is not out there. It's not something of my own making. The answer is in the scriptures. You know what I mean? When you draw nigh to God, he'll draw nigh to you. And when enduring personal difficulties or challenges or struggles or pain, I am drawn closer to God. And I know that his word says that there is a reason. I may not, like I said, see it, but in the by and by, I'll witness it. It's like in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. That's like not immediately. That's in the by and by. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness. By and by, you'll be filled. You might be hungry and thirsting for a while, but eventually it's gonna come about.
First, a statement. It always, I hate to say the word, it's not funny, but it's somewhat ironic and comical in a very sad way that you have some people that criticize God when he steps in, and then you criticize people when he doesn't step in. Yeah. And so the same people that criticize God for stepping in the Old Testament and destroying nations, wicked, awful, baby murdering nations.
Yeah.
And then they say he's wicked for doing that. And then they turn to the Holocaust and they say, well, where's God? If he was so great, why didn't he stop it all?
Yeah.
I find it ironic that they swing to either side, where God can't win in their eyes, no matter what he does. It's not righteous enough for them, as if they somehow can figure it out better. Well, great. Now I forgot my question.
Well, I've said that to the same student who said that he's an atheist. The problem of evil was his biggest issue. Also brought up that God wiped out nations. And I pointed out that exactly what you said, they were committing these atrocities for years. In some situations, like decades. And I said, if God didn't step in, you would be saying, where was God? He does step in, and you say, how could he do such a thing? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. When I articulated I articulated the baby killing, all that, what they were doing, he had no answer. And then this might be harsh, but I said that I believe that God exists. I believe he's the giver of life. He's under no obligation to let you live. He could, he could take you out when he sees fit. Mm-hmm. He's under no obligation to let them live. He allowed them to do what they were doing for decades. And then he made a decision. So,
Frank, I think it was Frank Turk that put it this way. Someone asked him, well, why doesn't God just get rid of all the evil in the world? And his answer was, well, if he did that, he may start with me.
Yeah. None of us would be here.
Exactly. I thought that was a great thing. My question, I remembered it. Would you say that the problem of evil is one of the biggest issues that people have when they leave the church? I don't personally know of many Christians who leave the church just because they turn stone cold atheist. Usually there's some evil that has taken place that drives them some other direction. Would you say that that's the case? And B, what would you say to those fallen, or what can we say to those fallen brethren who are struggling with this very problem?
I don't think people turn from the church because they can't, reconcile the existence of evil and the existence of an all-powerful, all-living God. The existence of evil out in the world might be an enticement. I've seen that. And because they want to latch on to some different lifestyle, which could be styled as evil, they leave the church. That's because they have a conscience, I think. They can't be aware of this lifestyle and fake this lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? And so they fall away. In that sense, evil is a problem, but I don't think they leave because of the problem of evil. What was the second part?
What can we say to them? Or what's the best? You talk about the emotional problem of evil.
Yeah.
How is the best way to address that with someone?
I've addressed it with people just through questions. You know, just like you were talking about with Tactics, which is a good book. Well, like I addressed the lady who was gonna marry this guy she had no business marrying. Why? What do you see? What's going on? Are you aware of X, Y, Z? You got to be real gentle. It's with someone who has fallen away, it is a huge challenge to be gentle and to be patient because you're dealing with somebody who knows the truth, right? You can't, just like you were speaking of with the person that you might be studying with, you can't force it. The challenge, I think, at least with me, is you don't know how much time you have left. You know what I'm saying? This is urgent, but you've got to be patient. That's the challenge. Know what I mean? You know what to say. You just don't want to unload it all in one sitting, but you don't know if you're going to be able to sit down with them again. That's the challenge. And the questioning part will lead you to where you need to go to give them some answers as far as in the scriptures. There may be stuff that they've forgotten and you reawaken what they've forgotten, what they've dismissed. But you won't find out what they have lost until you question them.
Could you go back to the, really enjoyed your presentation, but I'd like to see that slide with the no CMs again. And see if you could read that at double time. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I thought you were serious.
No,
There it is.
I'm teasing. But I want to tell you, no CMs are a real deal. They're a real thing. And it's one of those deals where you don't see them and suddenly you feel something biting your arm. And you look down and there's this little tiny speck. That's the no CM.
That's a no CM.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Quite a critter.
There, brother, do you have any concluding comments that you'd like to make?
No, just thanks again for the invitation. Always like coming to Columbia, Missouri. And I haven't told everybody, but I'll be able to come a lot more frequently since I'm retiring this year. It's my last year as a high school teacher.